Welcome, guys. It's our final day of the ONOG Summer Circuit Feature Tournament number 3. I'm Monk, and joined with me is Hotform. We've had some pretty exciting days. We've gone through both group stages, and now we're down to only four players. Hotform, what's been your favorite moment so far in this tournament?
Favorite moments. That's tough. I think
Putting you on the spot.
I think the Huffer top deck from Firebat in the game against Let Me Farm, was it? Where it was 2-2 in the series. It was the decider series, and Firebat needed damage as Hunter. He got Huffer, or he got Animal Companion off the top. Rolled Huffer as the only animal that would work, and won the entire series off of that. So that was pretty clutch, I guess, and that was kind of the Hunter victory story that we've seen a lot come out in this tournament.
Yeah, essentially, Firebat was put in a place where he had a 1 in 3 chance to advance to the final four, and it was at least a 1 in 3 chance to win $750. Because if he had not advanced, he would have gotten no money. But by getting in the top four, he has the at least guaranteed $750 with the additional possibility of winning up to $3,000 in this tournament and possibly even going to PAX as well.
Yep. Do you have a favorite moment, Monk?
Well, I like this final day. I liked how, just in general, how Sukipan played overall.
Yep.
I don't think he made too many mistakes. He had a lot of interesting tech choices, like mind control tech, like Ancient of War, for example, in his Druid. And we're going to be seeing him yet again in the first match. In fact, we kind of have to talk a bit about the format of this tournament. It's going to be 4 players in the semifinals, and in the group stages, players were allowed to bring 3 decks and play a best of 5. But now we're going up to 4 decks, and everyone's going to be playing a best of 7. The 4th deck that each player has submitted is Hunter from Sukipan and Warlock from Irony. These decks were submitted before the group stages, so players just had to figure out what the 4th best deck was instead of trying to counter their opponents.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see their lineups are almost the same here for the best of 7. Just the Druid and the Warrior switched. Both Irony and Sukipan a little bit less known than the other side of the bracket, but they've performed pretty much flawlessly in the games that we've seen from them so far. So I expect a pretty solid competition in this best of 7 series. And the best of 7 series is much more strategic for your pick options than a best of 5, because you have that extra ability to return fire, I guess, after you're down 1 game or 2 games. You're definitely not out of it, and you just have to be strategically attacking your opponent's decks. So
Yeah.
I like this format a little bit more than the best of 5 personally.
Yeah, I think a key point here is that Irony, he's going to be going with Warlock as his first pick. And because he didn't play Warlock in the round of 8, Sukipan doesn't know what kind of Warlock this is at all, which means that he's going to have a definitive advantage. Irony, that is.
Yep. Yeah, that's a very good point. Their extra deck is that unknown element that the other opponent will not have a clue into. So it does look like a pretty standard hand Warlock deck from Irony, though.
Yeah, but because Sukipan didn't know what kind of Warlock this was, he kept a Fire Warlock in his opening hand, which means he doesn't have opportunities. He doesn't have as many opportunities into drawing the executes that he might want, or even the massive card draw like Acolytes of Pain.
Yeah, definitely. Picking the Warrior at the start means that he got punished a bit on that, because it is a very specific mulligan for both types of Warlocks. Well, he should know now at least roughly what he's up against. It's still going to be something like the Dragon Malagos Warlock, which was really favorable for a long time, but we haven't seen in tournament play lately.
Yeah, I want to actually talk to you a bit about that, Hotform. I know you were one of the players who really loved that deck. You used it to qualify for one of the feature tournaments, the first feature tournament, in fact. But I haven't seen you or many other players playing it that much. What's up with that deck these days?
So I like that deck. I think it's a very, very good deck if you're laddering or something like that. It's super consistent across the matchups. But in tournament play, it seems like most people have brought Hunters, and it definitely struggles against Hunters. It doesn't have any big turnaround mechanic. You have to line up your Malagos burst, compared to something like the normal Warlock with Giants, which has the Molten Giants, and then the Hunter will get you low, and suddenly you can take back the entire board in an instant. Malagos Warlock just kind of clears and then slowly dies, so it really struggles in that matchup alone. And despite its awesome success rate in the other pretty much 8 other class matchups, it's not quite worth it to bring it if you know that it's going to be a weak link in your lineup.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think pretty much I would guess to say 80% of lineups these days have Hunter in it. So if you're bringing a deck that's going to be auto weak to 80% of lineups, probably not the best pick.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, we've seen this match a couple other times this tournament with the Hand Warlock versus Patron Warrior, and it's had mixed results. I think we've seen both sides win so far. Typically pretty even, but it's like a very strategic match where you're trying to take some risks and gamble off of if your opponent's going to have the correct answers or not.
Yeah. I think a key point of this matchup is just like the card draw involved, and um, Sukipan hasn't drawn any cards yet, I believe, and he only really has the opportunity to draw like 2 cards here. I guess 3 if he uses his Inner Rage on one of the minions as well.
Yeah,
It's not that great though.
this is really interesting. He can attack with the Armor Smith, then Inner Rage to get the maximum battle rage here. So he's deciding the Inner Rage is not really worth it, and he'd rather just get a fresh card, which I kind of like that play.
Yeah, I think Inner Rage is just really good against matchups where you want to get patrons on the board, because it costs 0 and it combos really well with the patrons in addition to a whirlwind effect. But it doesn't seem as useful in this matchup, just like how patrons aren't as useful in the handlock matchup because of the various AoEs that handlock generally has.
Yep. We can see that Shadow Flame sitting in Irony's hand. He could, of course, always play something like Ooze Shadow Flame. Emperor coming down, that will be not that difficult to deal with. I'd imagine Sukipan wants to try out his Deathbite luck anyways, and he'll just trade off the Armor Smith to make it an easy kill.
Yeah, that seems to be, I guess, the lesser of the 2 minions on the board. Don't really see another way to deal with this. An important aspect here is that because Irony has played Emperor, now Sukipan can't play Emperor on the same turn, and I think this is one of the better Emperor hands you could get with the War Song, Frothing, and Whirlwind, and even an Unstable Ghoul in your hand.
Yeah, well, actually, I was just thinking, like, if you Emperor it here, you almost have lethal next turn. You'd be very close with just the Patron setup. You risk the Warlock having a taunt or something, and then he'd be able to keep his Emperor, but I think that would be very tempting there for Suki to play just his own Emperor and get that hand organized quickly.
I think this is going to be just like the best ooze ever. It kills
Yeah.
off the Death Spite, kills off your opponent's ward. Sure, I'll take that.
The only thing is, Irony's health is really low, and one more activator from Suki and his Patron alone will end the game with like an 18 damage board.
Yeah. Another thing to consider is Irony just hasn't drawn too many of his threats. He got 1 Mountain Giant, which was very easily dealt with that Execute. But after that, the only other minion he was able to really play was the Sludge Belcher. He really needs like a second Twilight Drake, a Ragnaros that's pretty common in these handlock decks these days, or just another Mountain Giant perhaps.
Yeah, it seems like he's really struggling to actually put creatures on the board, which can be a big problem later, because if you're not killing the warrior, eventually they will draw enough cards and they'll put together some gigantic combo.
Wow, so not even tapping here because he's that afraid of some kind of big combo.
Yeah, that's...
I'm not sure how much I like that, but I did like how he used the Owl to silence the Loot Hoarder. There's not too many silence targets in this deck, and by silencing the Loot Hoarder, you deny 1 draw. And a lot of times, if you deny 1 draw, later on it just snowballs. Like if he gets 1 more card, maybe it's a Battle Rage, so he draws 5 more cards off of that.
Yeah, I like that as well, silencing the Loot Hoarder. There just isn't anything else to silence. It was a pretty smooth play. And that taunt in the way is going to be really tough to deal with. It's almost like one of those positions where if Suki just doesn't get an amazing card over the next 2 turns, he's going to be pretty much dead. Like even something simple, such as playing the heal bot next turn for Irony, will add things to the board that will eventually punish the warrior's health.
Yeah. He needs some type of card draw in the next few cards, I feel, or... How good would a Frothing be? I don't think it would be that good since you have this huge taunt in front of you as well.
I think the frothing would do it, yeah. Because he can get 4 patrons, and it would take 3 patrons to kill
That's a good point.
the
Oh,
Twilight Drake.
but now we have this other huge taunt that will be coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, Suki actually drew quite a few cards at the start, but when you have no card draw in your hand at all, and you're just passing on your turns against something that's getting the biggest creatures in the game, it's not a great situation. Just thinking about it, I guess he's debating between Sludge or Giant because the hand was Empered, so you would be pretty scared of dying, and it feels so wasteful to die here when you have like heal and area of effect damage.
Yeah, I would just say he's probably wants to go with the safest play. Oh, this is pretty interesting. I think he just doesn't really want this Argus to be on the board, killing off that minion. And now he has 2 huge taunts, so execute's going to be
Ooh.
good, but he does need that frothing.
Yeah, he could at least he can clear everything and do a pretty good job of it. It takes away 2 of his patrons, but he would have 2 full health patrons and one health patron plus the charge left over, and he could clear the entire board, which would mean he would deal 9, no, 6 damage, 6 damage to face, putting Irony at 9 health. It would cost him his entire hand except for the other charge, though, so it's a pretty big commitment to just get AoE'd away, and even though the Warlock would be low, there would be no way to finish. I think you
So
just need to wait for a frothing.
yeah, I think this is just an armor pass turn. That should send some alarm bells to Irony, though.
Yeah, so let's say Sludge and Healbot comes down. I don't think a frothing does it anymore.
Okay, that's cute.
Does telegraph a bit to Irony.
So because of this telegraph, I would expect an antique Healbot to come down here.
Wow.
Yep.
No, I mean, I wasn't even sure it mattered. I think I would have just gone for Healbot Sludge Belcher no matter what. It's like the safest possible play, and you're going to kill him next turn. Like, presumably you don't even need to kill that 2/3 there. Yes, he'll kill it, but if Suki was willing to throw that away, he has another one, and it's been Empered already. You know the coin is in hand, so there's just nothing that could be that expensive right now.
The problem if you don't kill it, though, is you might think that he has like 2 Frothing Berserkers, and because you left a War Song on the field, then he doesn't have to play that other War Song in his hand.
Yeah.
Oh, this is pretty huge.
He can play it all. Is that 7? Yeah, he can play the whole hand. He executed the wrong thing for the easiest kill, though. He left the higher health taunt alive. It was not enough to kill there, was it? Let's see. He could have cleared the board and got 6 damage of patrons through. Would have been frothing with 2 whirlwinds on 4 creatures for the opponent, plus...
Well, I think the issue is that that creature that he killed had 8 attack, and if he left it on the board, his opponent would have 18 damage. Or sorry, he would have 13 damage from just the board alone. And if he has like another Dark Bomb or another Hellfire, Sukipan would just be in danger of dying. Like he would have died if he didn't kill off the Mountain Giant, I believe.
It looks like he could have dealt 6 damage to face. Last turn, he could have dealt 6 damage to face with patrons, and he would have had the frothing as 2 + 9 + 8. So 2 8s and a 9 for...
But by the way, I really like how Sukipan just like played out his hand. There's no way he calculated this, but he just has to go for it. And it's very often that you just don't have enough time to do all the motions because frothings are involved, patrons are involved, and belchers are just involved as well.
There's no way he can get through the taunts here, though. I agree. I like that he played it out. Last turn, I think he might have had lethal. I mean, 2 8s and a 9, and the Warlock's at 21 says to me that the frothing would have killed, but he would have got last turn. He would have got 2 patrons through, and then frothing was 19. So I think he might have. I don't want to say that for sure because like the turns went kind of fast, and I don't remember exactly if Irony had 21 health then or what. But that's definitely if you guys were interested in chat to go back and check out the VOD for that because that's a huge deal if he didn't do it there, or at least to check how much damage he had just for interest's sake on like a Reddit lethal.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do there? It's those turns are just really hard overall, and if you don't get lethal on that turn and you just take a misstep, that's also a Reddit thing where they post, "Oh, you just, like it was
Yeah.
like the worst patron move ever."
But okay, so you want to help me with the math, Monk? I guess it's patron math, right? Once it's over, it's like impossible to think about. There was 4 creatures on the board for the Warlock, and there was going to be 4 on the board for the Warrior. So the first Whirlwind would be +8. I know he would execute the Twilight Drake. The Mountain Giant would take 2 patrons, and 2 patrons would manage to hit face. Because there would be 2 Whirlwinds on the Giant, so the Giant would have 6 health. And then the second Whirlwind would be the Unstable Ghoul, triggering after a patron had already spawned for a 9 at least, and it might even be 10 because the Ghoul attacks for 1 damage. In any case, 2 8s and a 9 is much higher than 21. That's 25, so...
All right, we're gonna have someone look back at that afterwards. We're
Yeah.
gonna maybe call Disguise Toast, have him have like a lethal cam on.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I'll definitely be interested in going and checking out the VOD. Because the first game of the series like that, often you're not totally warmed up and you might be in a certain mindset. And it's easy to, the first game I find is the one that I'm most likely to make a mistake in where I'm just not in the zone yet and I haven't gotten my brain functioning right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we're gonna be moving on to our second game, Mid-Range Hunter from Irony and a mystery deck from Sukipan.
The hunters have just been doing really well this tournament, although we saw a lot more of the hybrid hunters than mid-range, right? Saw a lot of the...
I think just generally hybrid hunter is way more common.
A lot of arcane golems.
I think also just in general, hybrid hunter, in my opinion, is slightly better, especially against patron warrior, because sometimes with the mid-range hunter, you don't have a reliable burst to finish off the game, even though your opponent is at like 10 or less health. They can often just stabilize, get a lot of armor, and then you can't ever get back board control.
Wow, that top deck. This hand has now become ridiculous for Suki, and we can see that there's nothing in Irony's hand that deals with this well. He's going to have the on-curve swipe afterwards as well.
Yeah. While that is true, because this is a mid-range hunter, there are likely more answers than if it were a hybrid hunter to the Ancient of War. Like the mid-range hunter is much more likely to have the hunter's mark, and much more likely to have even owls, I believe.
Yep. I mean, this is technically a good choice. I think this is smart because it's very consistent compared to the Ancient of War getting silenced or getting hunter's marked, especially. But this gets punished pretty easily just by getting killed, whereas the Ancient of War would have stood its ground in spectacular fashion. So didn't quite work out as well given the current hand.
Yeah, I think the Ancient of War was just simply more all-in, I guess, and by drawing these 2 extra cards, it gives them more options going into turn 4 and 5.
You could probably expect like a kill command there, though, to wreck your Ancient of Lore. So
even if he kill commands your Ancient of Lore, though, I don't think you feel too bad because the board position for the hunter isn't that threatening. It's just a 1 attack power, 1 power minion on the board.
yeah, true. I think it would have felt a lot better if he actually drew a 4-mana creature, because that mind control tech could be really useful later as an actual steal. Instead, he had to just like play it out as a creature.
Yeah, mind control tech is like one of, it's like in this matchup, it's most useful.
Yeah, definitely, because the hunter, there's very rarely a game where they don't have 4 creatures on the board.
It's gonna have a little...
Easy.
Where's your mind control tech now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this board position... well, Sukipan's hand was like pretty tenuous when we first saw it. He had double swipe and an innervate, but it's actually working out pretty well here. Although I will say this is not going to be good. Not only does he have the high main, but he has a mad scientist on the field. So even if Sukipan throws down the Sylvanas, it's very likely for the mad scientist to get out a freezing trap. Although we do know that Irony runs snake traps in his deck.
Yeah, and of course, then you would be tempted to check as Suki, I think, knowing that also there are snake traps and the reward would be quite great. I think the one thing we can say is that at least the Ancient of War is still going to be pretty much uncontested, and there's not many things that stand up to a high main, but an Ancient of War does a pretty good job.
Yeah. One thing Irony also has to consider is that if Irony runs down the his own mad scientist and gets a freezing, he still has to be worried about potential force of nature to clear off the freezing pretty easily.
Also, a Wrath. If he trades his scientist into Sylvanas, Wrath would allow the Sylvanas to just straight steal one of the creatures, and he could grab the high main with that.
Yeah,
If you don't attack the Sylvanas, it might be a little nicer because the Sylvanas trades into the high main, and then you just end up probably stealing like a 2/2 hound. This is a really
so
important choice.
you've seen one mind control tech, so is there any consideration that a second mind control tech could also be in Sukipan's deck? Or is that something you can't consider at the moment?
Well, we've seen Suki's deck before, right? I can guarantee Irony went back and watched the VODs to find out as much info as he can. I don't think we ever saw two. That would be pretty notable, so I think you would plan on just the one, but... Oh, wow. That is really strange that he would play the Harrison. That's like the only way that... Okay, well, this is just glorious for... Oh, no, but he still has to kill the scientist, and then the trap will be there, right?
Yeah.
It seems like the Shredder was a much safer play to me, where the Shredder would not allow the Sylvanas to die. It's like, let's pretend maybe a silence, and then innervate a swipe. Yeah, he played both innervates, so I guess this is safe. Just scary to give that Sylvanas a way to trigger. Is he gonna 50-50 it?
Oh, a betting man there.
Oh,
He gets a high
yeah.
man. I'd want to see some emotes here. Definitely 0 out of 10 emotes for our Asian players.
Very stoic. Oh man, I mean, like, yeah, the Harrison was so punishing there. Like, it cost a gamble, and it could have backfired, but now the game's almost over. Like, you can't do anything here. You can't get by the Sludge Belcher, and he's got a high main.
Yeah, essentially that high main steal was like a 12 mana point swing. Even more if you consider a high main is probably worth more than 6 mana.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a 12 swing for just the Death Rattle, because Sylvanas also killed a creature.
Yeah, so if you consider that, Sylvanas was a 6 mana creature and it killed off a Harrison Jones as well. So it was 6 mana and it gained him 17 mana worth of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, Irony has to feel bad about that. He did the secret as a freezing trap, so... I mean, if he had traded the scientist, there were so many other lines of play there for Irony to maybe avoid that, but the gamble was not on his side.
Yeah, this almost seems locked out here. He even draws into a trap.
You could bluff this trap, like, reasonably well.
I mean, you could bluff it, but I don't think Sukipan really cares too much about the mad scientist, or cares too much about the piloted shredder.
I think I might have liked to see the Eagle Horn Bow, actually, instead of the trap and the Direwolf, just because that's, like, the only way you're going to get any bonus advantage. But yeah, it doesn't really matter right now, to be honest. Just play the Sludge Belcher again and play the Ancient of War even. Forget the Sludge Belcher. Forgot he even had that creature.
So if you play the Ancient of War, is there anything that Irony could have that could kill you. I guess an owl into kill command would be the two best cards in his hand. Um, and
Yeah,
that
there's no way at 19.
even if he had those two exact cards, then he would only be able to do 14 damage. Oh, he gets the
Oh,
owl.
wow. That owl timing. That's some hunter timing right there. How it always seems to be right at the top when you need it. It's gonna try for a Doomsayer, I guess. That's pretty legit. And then you could trade the Direwolf into the high main.
Okay. Well, we're back to having the score tied up 1-1. And we're really complimenting both these players that they've been playing pretty well in their group so far. But as you mentioned, Hotform, we might have seen our first mistake from Irony.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of that warm up period, right? And maybe it's still early for them. I feel that way a lot when I'm getting involved in some matches the first time of the day. But this is like a very important series for 750 more dollars if they win this, plus the chance at the grand prize. So it's like really important not to be taking risks like that, I think, where you could lose the high main. Of course, on the other side, if Suki had stole the mad scientist, then we could say, oh, well, why did he go for that? You know, it's tough to do in a game like
Yeah.
Hearthstone when a 50-50 is deciding the match in such a staggering way.
Yeah, if he had stolen the mad scientist, we'd be like, oh man, what a brilliant play from Irony, baiting out that Sylvanas steal, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Baiting out with the Harrison. I don't know. The Shredder was just like more consistent than Harrison, even as a creature on the board there too, right? You had the Death Rattle effect, and what was Harrison gonna do except push one more face damage?
All right, so good old Patron Mirror. And okay, so Irony actually keeps his entire hand. And Sukipan kept a Death Spite here. So here's an important question that I've never seen any caster really ask, and it's that who's advantaged in this matchup going first versus going second? I feel like going second, you're allowed to go off on Patron slightly earlier, but maybe there's an advantage to going first as well.
Yeah, I prefer going second with the coin here. You're looking for like that one big turn as a patron warrior, and I think in this type of match, because it's happening so early, the coin is more powerful. Let's see, what's a match where going first is better? Say like a hunter match, as long as you have a one drop, going first is infinitely better. But
Yeah. I think it just in general the like the control mirrors, it feels like going first is better, since you can often you can play your threats off just generally before your opponent can,
yep.
except for that one turn where he uses the coin. Like I was talking to Fibonacci, who's like the control warrior god, and he says going first in the control warrior mirror is just infinitely better.
Yeah, I could see that. When you're not looking for like that one big power turn, then the coin doesn't really help you that much. It only gets a single advantage, whereas you get an advantage every other turn.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because in the patron mirror you do rely on that single turn to win you the game, like turn 5 or turn 6, whereas in the control warrior mirror, it's like a continuous string of threats.
So I like Irony's hand a lot better right now. He's got at least a 4 set of patrons on turn 5.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like Sukipan can really... He needs to top deck twice in a row to be able to set up his own string of patrons.
I'm really surprised to see Irony not play Armorsmith. Maybe he figures that Deathbite comes out anyways, so he doesn't want to play a creature into it. But normally you just throw the Armorsmith on there and put like a little bit into the board, so maybe you could get like a Battle Rage or something later. Especially when Irony is prepared with the War Axe, so that he wouldn't get punished by a similar Armorsmith or Acolyte out of...
yeah, or even like the predicted No Mission Mentor here.
Yeah, and that would let his War Axe trade better.
I think the not playing Armorsmith is definitely okay though. Like just like you said, predicted Death Spite. You don't want to give him a free Armorsmithing, for example, when you could you predict that he will just go to face.
Yep. Maybe also because Irony has the patrons already, he feels really safe, so he knows he doesn't have to like draw any more cards or do anything weird. He'll just go to his consistent turn.
I think another thing to consider is by playing the Armor Smith, you give your opponent also a slam target. And Irony, because he has slam in his hand right now, he's consistently thinking of that.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Irony right now, he wants his opponent to play like an Omen Inventor.
Well, I think he's in pretty good position anyways. He's just like debating if he does anything this turn before he does an amazing patron combo. We do see the War Axe from Suki will be one of the best ways to actually deal with that early patron setup. It's better than the Death Bite to do it because you can use the second attack successfully without proccing any more patrons.
Okay, so now he throws down the Armor Smith. So I think what this tells me is that maybe he wants his opponent to play a Death Spite here. And if you're doing this play, maybe Sukipan is wary that there might be a Harrison Jones coming up afterwards.
Yeah, I think that would be that's like a great mind game from Irony to suggest that Harrison is there and that little mental edge in these patron warrior matches can often make the difference. So just got to put every little bit in you can. Everyone, get in here.
Well, now Sukipan knows what 4 cards that Irony kept in his opening hand. And I would say about 80 to 90% of the time, this is just game over.
So yeah, he has the Death Bite on, which means that if he attacks, he's going to end up spawning more. He has no counter patron of his own. He can kill everything, but then there'll be 2 patrons left, and he has to attack into 1, and it's going to spawn an extra. So
actually, there is a way to clear everything here.
Really?
Yeah, with Warsong
charge.
Commander charging charging the Armor Smith into one of the patrons, executing another patron, and then Death Spiting the final patron.
Yeah, that's actually a really good play. Irony just committed to that, and he had a Battle Rage, so I mean the play looked glorious for Irony, but shutting it down here will bring the board like back to neutral, plus Irony's down a patron, so until he draws the other one, he could just be in a really rough spot.
Well, that being said, you've used so many resources in order to deal with this patron board.
Yeah.
And now you give your opponent the initiative.
Yeah, I mean I think it was tough, and it cost him, but that was like definitely the best play, yeah.
So again, Irony is faced with the dilemma that he can't actually slam anything.
And he can't Battle Rage either. He hasn't taken any damage, and no creatures remain, so...
I mean, is there a viable play where you Unsable Ghoul, slam, and Battle Rage for 1?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, next turn, that actually doesn't seem too bad. I think I'd probably wait one more turn, just because, like, Suki used a lot of stuff, so you're hoping he doesn't have anything great backing it up, but... He will get punished if he plays the Ghoul out, because there's Acolyte from Suki.
This is quite a unique patron board, though, or a unique patron game where, again, like 80 to 90% of the time, there's no way to deal with 4 patrons on the opposing side of the board when they have a Death Spite equipped. In fact, I think this is the first time I've seen 4 patrons being dealt with from a patron player.
Yeah, honestly, these are like the coolest games when it didn't get blown out right away, right? And now both players are in this somewhat iffy position, and they have to navigate how to outdraw their opponent, and it looks really weird to be on turn 7 with neither player playing a creature, but it's actually like one of the most tactical matches you can see in Hearthstone.
Yeah. Another thing to consider is that Sukipan, he has 2 patrons left in his deck, while Irony only has 1. And on the flip side, Irony has 2 Warsong Commanders left in his deck, while Sukipan only has 1. So both like the resources of each player is there. they have to play around different things now, I feel.
This is tense. All this passing back and forth, and then you can see the tension.
Yeah, these both these players have really low mana utilization right now. I don't know how far have you been watching a lot of PvP live?
I saw a couple games, but I didn't catch a lot of the series. They had the interesting statistics, right, with blowback and
Yeah.
yeah.
And mana utilization, that's a huge one.
Okay, this is looking a lot better for Suki. I think you just throw the Acolyte down. You can start getting some draws off of it. First person to move faster and get into like a real turn is going to be at a big advantage.
Yeah, it's gonna be a pretty huge.
What?
Okay, so I think he does this because he's waiting for a big battle rage, and by big battle rage I mean with 2 minions.
I guess.
Like he wants to acolyte, maybe like throw down an armor smith on the field, whirlwind, and then battle rage.
I agree that it wouldn't be. Ooh.
Oh,
Well, that was good that he saved the inner rage then, I suppose. This
yeah.
now
So
looks amazing.
yeah, so now he can patron, inner rage, whirlwind, and then battle rage.
Yep. He only gets 2 draws off the battle rage, but saving that inner rage is now allowing him to actually do the patron turn, so this is much better. He could also draw off the battle rage another activator and get a 6 patron.
Okay, so let's look at Irony's hand now. If Sukipan goes for that play, which it looks like he's doing, is there any way for Irony to kill off everything? He can slam a patron, he can Taskmaster one. See, the thing is, he has 3 ways to deal with damaged patrons, but he has not really too many ways to deal with full HP patrons.
Yeah.
And it's just generally the full HP patrons that you have difficulty dealing with.
So I think you charge the frothing. Yeah, it seems like you could kill everything but one of them, but I don't think you can clear all of the full health ones. There's going to be at least 1 remaining. Okay, there might be a way to maximize the board here, and then if he fills up the entire board with 1 health ones, the full health patrons won't spawn more, so you can damage them. And then again, he might just be drawing cards because he knows he can't do it. Alright. There is the potential to one-shot the other patron warrior when there's patrons on the board. The Frothing Berserker gets enormous. He needs some more activators, though, and maybe like an Emperor would get him there next turn.
Yeah, but
Oh, it's dangerous.
so Sukipan, the problem is that Sukipan has 40 HP at the moment, and Frothing Berserkers can get pretty huge, but like you mentioned, there's only really 1 Whirlwind activator in Irony's hand.
I like this Battle Rage. This is a very scary board with that many patrons, because when you attack again, then you're vulnerable to losing them all at once.
So I would think that Hot Form, you would definitely agree with this particular attack.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Just to clear it up. Plus the Battle Rage drew him the 2nd patron, so it's not nearly as vulnerable now. Even if you lose all these, you have a backup plan. 40 health melts like butter when you hit them for 15 every turn.
Yep. No, so desperate. You can counter your opponent's Battle Rage with your own Battle Rage and draw 3 fewer cards.
So, is there a way to clear here? You do charge with Taskmaster on the 3 health patron, and you run the Taskmaster into the other 3 health patron. And then you play Unstable Ghoul, and the board is full. And you can damage all of them, and they won't spawn anymore. And then you also have an Execute left over. I think you could at least get it to the point where there is only a 1 health patron left, but it would cost him most of his activators, so especially with the second frothing now, I think you're looking more to just draw Emperor before you die.
Yeah, there.
It's was close there.
Yeah, you can go with the play that you suggested, but it definitely doesn't feel like a winning play because your
Yeah.
opponent has so many cards already that if you just clear off this first wave of patrons, you do expect a second wave to come along. But with this particular board, like most of the cards in Sukipan's hand are dead, and I would, as Sukipan, I would just try to get as much health as possible at this point.
Yeah. I'm not even sure if you. Ooh, that's risky to play. That's his last charge. Doesn't really need that now. Honestly, I don't even think you need to kill the creatures. You can just push face with all the patrons, and you do a huge chunk of damage, and then you have a backup patron with charge for later.
If you kill all the creatures, or if you leave the creatures on the board, though, aren't you more afraid of the double frothing berserkers?
Yeah, I suppose. Because Irony didn't Emperor, the max of double frothing could be is one whirlwind, so it's like one whirlwind plus an inner rage, which is not enough damage anyways.
I like the slow and steady race that Sukipan is going with right now, not committing too much on the board. And
Maybe
just simply winning. Like, he's setting up lethal at this point anyway.
I think the loot hoarder was probably okay there, but doesn't really matter that much. Well, for Irony,
It's pretty hilarious that he still can't really efficiently clear.
you can clear now with the charging of frothing, right? No, I still can't do it actually. Needs to play the weapon first and chop one.
I think he's one mana off from clearing. If he had a War Axe instead of the Death Spite, he would be able to clear.
Yeah. Ah, desperation sits in. And this got to feel a little bad for Irony, considering he had the first patron. Emperor never showed up, though.
I'm sure from Irony's perspective that he pretty much had the game locked up just by that turn 6 play. But then it dragged on to a really slow game. And that... Okay, so there's only one Frothing Berserker, but...
He can't pop his unstable ghoul. So you do Taskmaster with Patron and Frothing.
I think you can pop the Unstable Ghoul, right, with Harrison Jones?
Oh, this works too. He steals the Whirlwind off that weapon.
Yeah. So actually using his opponent's Whirlwind against him. That's pretty hilarious.
That was a cool play. That was really well played by Suki to take that back. I mean, from the opening deficit, and he saw the masterful play, the only way to clear the board, brought it all the way back after slow and steadily, saved his resources, saved the inner rage, drew the patron. Really nice.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like we mentioned, usually when your opponent gets that turn 5 or 6 for patron turn up, it's usually impossible for the opposing patron to deal with it. But that was pretty much the first time that we saw any patron player deal with that efficiently. And both players used so many resources in order to first get that play off and also to counter that play that it turned into a very back and forth game.
So we have, it seems like the deck lists on the screen there are wrong because obviously both players brought a Patron Warrior. So Suki did not have Patron listed as one of his decks.
Yeah,
and it looks like the Warlock was.
Yes. So Sukipan, he does not have a Rogue.
Okay. So there we go. Just a little UI difference then. The players are not cheating, which is always a good thing to know.
All right, so probably this is going to be a hybrid hunter here.
Have we seen this before?
We've saw a lot of face hunters from Osaka and Firebat, but I do believe they were the only face hunters.
There's been so many hunters. Yeah, I guess it has to be hybrid then because he's playing Wolf Rider, but I don't even really remember Suki as playing a hunter that much. So
Well, we remember Trump yesterday. He drew in his first game against Control Warrior. We thought that he had, like, pretty much he had all face hunter cards, and then the
Yeah.
next game he had all mid range hunter cards.
Yeah, that was really crazy. Just the complete opposites. Great hand for both players.
When both players have perfect hands, though, who do you favor in the matchup?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it depends on if Animal Companion brings a Huffer or not. Huffer is really valuable in a matchup like this where the warrior will often have to just hit it with a weapon.
Yeah, it's quite funny the variation in how good the Huffers are, or how good the different animal companions are, because you do have to usually, like, when you do a turn 3 animal companion, they have to deal with it with a turn 4 death spite, and if it's Huffer, he takes 8 damage. If it's Misha, he takes 4 damage, and if it's Leok, he takes 2 damage.
It seemed like Irony pretty much had an answer to anything that would come down here. Huffer would have traded into the Armorsmith. Oh, I'm surprised he didn't Whirlwind, actually. Oh, he's going to save the Execute. So he doesn't know necessarily what type of hunter he's up against, I suppose, because that was a pretty good Execute.
I definitely think he does, since he's seen the previous games. This does look like, from the opening hand though, this does look like it's a face hunter simply because of the explosive trap. But we have seen a lot of hybrid hunters play explosive trap as well, even though it's definitely not as common as either freezing or snake.
Yep. It's tough to execute even against a hybrid hunter. The most you can execute is normally like a high main, I guess, which could be pretty good when you're playing patrons later. You get a good chunk of blowback face damage there, but you do develop the weapon for next turn, which is also a consideration that he might want to be, say, playing the Warsong Commander and he wants to have his weapon available to clear off the board so he can do that safely.
Okay, well, this is pretty ambitious here.
Yep.
Although I do feel that giving the patron a lot of mana when he only has 4 cards isn't as bad as, like, say, giving a druid, since it's oftentimes the case, like as we see with this hand, Irony's hand actually can't do too much.
Yeah, I totally agree. Giving a patron warrior mana is only going to matter if he has a lot of stuff, but because he didn't draw any cards yet, you're not too scared about that. Does always feel a little bad to play an Arcane Golem on curve. You essentially just gave your opponent a wild growth for completely nothing.
I'm gonna armor up here. So what are the merits of just playing Warsong on curve there? Or just playing Warsong just on the field?
I think if the Emperor was not in hand and it was like a patron instead, then it might be worth it, but really the charge is like super valuable here, so I don't think that's a big consideration, and especially once you get the mana reduction, it's like, alright, there's no reason to waste that important vehicle.
So it does seem like Irony is in a pretty big lead at the moment.
Yep.
I would say, just with the Emperor Thor's in. Even though he's pretty low on cards, to really round out his hand, he has to draw into some kind of card draw. I think the one issue with the Patron against Hunter is that you really mulligan for the anti-aggro cards like the Armorsmiths, the War Axes, and the Unstable Ghouls. But when you get those, you don't really have time to get into your card draw mechanics. So oftentimes this can happen, and the Hunter can even out-card the Warrior.
I'm surprised he didn't silence the Emperor there. He went for the trap, which will... his current trap is explosive, so this should give him a snake trap. Ah, no, he's one of the only hunters to not be playing snake trap.
Okay, so he's only playing explosive, so this indeed is just going to be face Hunter.
Wonder why he played the Mad Scientist out instead of silencing, because the Emperor is pretty important. Even though the Warrior doesn't have many cards, you don't know exactly what he has, so it's a little scary to let that continue.
Wait, so because Irony didn't attack, it just means that he didn't do his research, right? If he had seen Sukipan's games, he would know that he plays Explosive Trap.
But I think this is the new deck from Suki, right?
Oh, is it? Oh, you're right.
Because every single hunter we had seen played had snake, so this is the first time I've seen a hunter without snake trap in the whole tournament.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's especially important because with I think both players from their fourth decks got some advantage because Irony is playing around the freezing trap, obviously, but at the same time, Sukipan mulliganed incorrectly against the handlock from Irony in their game.
Yep. Yeah, their secret decks have definitely been effective so far. Finally brings out the silence. You know, honestly, it's not that bad for Suki here. He doesn't... Okay, well, yeah, that's bad, I suppose. The 14 health from the Warrior, though, looks a lot more manageable than when he was Arcane Goleming and the Warrior was at, like, 27, so he's put a decent dent in.
Yeah, the only thing that the Arcane Golem really did was get an Emperor out slightly earlier, which I guess is kind of a big deal.
Like, I think this feels really bad for Suki, but if he could see his opponent's hand has no actual creatures in it, then he might be feeling a little more peppy. It's very easy to draw dead as a Patron Warrior, where you end up drawing, like, Inner Rage, and a Slam. Slam your own Harrison.
Yeah. Um, Again, Irony's running to the same issue where he just doesn't have anything to slam. He's just basically asking, why aren't these loot hoarders right now? Because I think a few months ago, there was like this huge debate about whether loot hoarders or slams are better in Patron Warrior.
Yep. I think that's still ongoing. I don't think anybody has really decided. Slam seems like the flavor right now, but they both have merits.
Yeah. I think it's more that like no one used slam in the first few weeks of Patron Warrior. Then suddenly it became like 50-50. Then people cut the loot hoarders for slams. And now I feel like the trend is it's going back to more around like 75% slam and 25% loot hoarder.
Ooh, Armor Smith, really good draw. The Warrior was actually getting pretty low there to the point of like 9 HP on a given turn. You could pick up, you know, at 9 HP, for example, pick up a second kill command, you actually could win. But the Armor Smith will at least allow some health to be gained. I think you would probably throw out the Harrison here too, just knowing that that's explosive for sure because you saw the other trap didn't trigger with the Mad Scientist.
I wouldn't mind just throwing out all your minions, attacking face, and then charging the Armor Smith into your opponent. And that would gain you 8 armor, I believe. Yeah, it would be 8 armor, and then you could armor up, gain 10 armor this turn, take 2 damage from the explosive trap, and you'd be at 19.
Yeah, it looks good. Although it is vulnerable to like maybe getting cleared and then he has nothing left. That's... I would have at least liked to see him proc the trap. I mean, there's nothing going for him not proccing it, right? He can wait for a patron, I suppose, and then that's actually way more potent because he patrons with the Armor Smith and the explosive trap will help make more of them.
It's probably like close to the maximum amount of damage that he could have.
Yeah.
Although, again, Sukipan's in the position that Firebat was in. If he draws like a Huffer here, he would have a pretty good lethal opportunity.
Oh man, the Huffer top deck next turn. So he's got 11 right now. Go for it. Yeah, I think going for it's fine. It's a 9 mana play, so it's not really going to get any better.
Yeah, but now you definitely go for the huge Armor Smith turn. If he uses the second kill command.
So this kill command doesn't make a huge difference, right? You play the steady shot now, and then next turn you would play steady shot kill command. So even with no beast, you've ended up with 5 net damage either way by squeezing in the extra steady shot. But you have the potential to draw a beast, which makes
I definitely
it,
agree.
Yeah, slightly 2 damage better if you could pick up a beast.
Okay, this seems pretty ideal at the moment.
Yeah. Well, there's no time to wait either. This was commanding by Irony, but now it's, you know, it's getting close where top deck quick shot could easily decide the game.
I still think it's looking pretty good for Irony. He's going to get a lot of armor here. He's going to draw a lot of cards.
Yeah. So how much armor does he get?
So he would basically... Okay, so he would get...
He gets
I
the
believe,
whirlwind off the
I believe like
weapon.
around 9 armor.
Yeah, should be pretty good.
Why did he? Is there a reason he attacked that beast though?
So he gains 1 extra armor by the Emperor being alive, but yeah, other than that, I can't see it. No, so that doesn't help him though, right? By attacking the beast, he gained 1 more armor, but he took 1 damage. So I think that was the exact same.
Do you know if you attack face, whether the death rattle goes first or the explosive trap procs first?
The explosive trap would proc first, so it would kill the Emperor. Then there would only be 3 creatures. So yeah, he would lose that 1 extra armor he gained by the whirlwind hitting Emperor, but he would have done 4 face damage and not taken 1 damage from the Hound. So it was the exact same amount of health gained, making that a mistake. Huh. I really like the Patron better than the weapon here. Both are pretty legit. The weapon puts in more face damage right away. Yeah, because you have the slam too, so you get armor from this. Yeah, this is actually better than the weapon. You're getting real health, which...
Yeah. Does that set up for lethal? You have. You need a Warsong commander here, really.
The Hunter's kind of close to lethal too. He's got 10. Another patron is spawned. Essentially, the armor smith is just getting outdone by each patron spawned into the unleashes the exact same amount of damage. So
Yeah, but the issue here is, I don't believe there's actually a card that would just straight up win the game for Sukipan. He would need a Leroy Jenkins, I believe.
or quick shot, I think he needs 3 damage additional based on he has no, he needs 4 damage additional.
Oh,
No, I think he actually needs 4 damage though, right?
yeah.
It's,
So
8
yeah,
plus.
even a quick shot wouldn't do it here.
Wait. No. He's got it. That's exactly lethal, right? It's 10 plus 5. I don't even know.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow. Any top decks of Wolf Rider, just in case. Just in case
Why
he gets
not?
more damage next turn. Oh, man. Oh, that has to feel really terrible for Irony. That was his match.
Is there anything Irony could have done on that last turn to gain him enough armor, or it's just like the? Yeah, I think it's just that every armor you gain from the armor smith would be counteracted by the Unleash the Hounds. So,
Yeah. I don't think on the last turn he couldn't gain any more health because yeah, the unleash would just get more. He had the Harrison in his hand still, right? And I mean that was like the only thing that you could have done different was you could have played out more stuff at an earlier time. And I think that's the only other decision that has to feel so bad. I think Quickshot was the only top deck there, right? Because if you drew a 3 mana card, you couldn't squeeze in the steady shot. So
yeah. So yeah, if you drew a 4 mana card, even I don't think anything really does that 5 damage that you need.
yep. And he had 6 mana tied up with the unleash kill command. Wow, the exact lethal off the top. The hunters in this tournament have been absolutely wrecking people. And of course that puts Suki up 3-1, which is a huge advantage in a best of 7. When you only have one deck left, it's like all the pick strategy is gone. You're just gonna try to take all your games off of that deck, so.
We do have Zoo though from Sukipan. I just generally think that the Chinese scene really enjoys playing Zoo.
Yeah.
We've seen more Zoo from China than pretty much every other region. Although I know like players like Firebat really love their Zoo.
It seems like often the Asian servers really favor these aggressive decks. I know when I was watching Zigzo play his Legend Climb on Asia, that like a huge number of his matches were against Tempo Mages, even though Tempo Mage is, it's semi-popular on North America, but by no means an overwhelming favorite. And to see that many people going up against him with it was like pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, like we said, Zoo is very common in Asia. Hunter was also very common in Asia. Temple Mage, as you mentioned, and also the Mech Shaman deck that we've seen a lot in the Western scene is also comes from Asia, Korea specifically.
All right, so Patron Warrior versus Zoo Warlock. This is like kind of standard match. I would give advantage to Patron for sure, but it's by no means impossible for the Zoo.
Yeah. It does feel like the patron is favored, but I think it's one of those circumstances where if the patron wins the game, it's often a blowout where they just get so many patrons on the board and it just feels really bad. Whereas if the zoo wins, it's probably like a much closer game. So I think it's probably closer to 50-50 than most players would give it credit for.
Yep, I could agree with that. I think double flame imp especially is like one of the best openings you could have here. You just want to be putting on pressure as quickly as possible. So something like a Nerubian egg, for example, is really slow and it's allowing the patron warrior to get prepared. But if you can get them to 15 health so quickly, then their situation's a lot more dire.
Yeah. The key play or the obvious play here is the Imp Gang boss, but Sukipan is thinking whether he wants to put it at 3 health or 4 health.
Yep.
I think I kind of like putting it at 3 health a bit more since you expect a Death Spite to come out on turn 3 with the coin.
Yeah, me too. You gain 1 extra damage by sacrificing that 1 health. Just gonna choose to keep it full.
So what this does is, does it play around Whirlwind slightly more perhaps?
I guess it's just as long as the warrior didn't have Deathbite, this is much harder to remove. Or even that you're forcing the coin. You know that he's going to Deathbite this if he has it, so maybe you want to see that coin come out early.
Yeah, but now the Defender of Argus is pretty perfect here. You take
Yeah.
both the minions out of the Death Rattle range of the Death Spite.
Oh boy, he needs a Void Caller.
I remember at Assembly over the last weekend, Powder and Vortex were playing a match, and Vortex was basically he was really nervous after winning 2 games, but then going down 0-2, and basically he was nervous about he played Zoo those 2 games and he never drew a Void Caller, so he was like, did I even put this card in my deck?
Yeah. The Void Caller is such a huge like tempo swing and 4 mana for a Death Rattle that can be a 9 mana creature. So it looks like he might burn the Execute here. And if the Doomguard... Okay, that was very, very good top deck. I think otherwise he probably would have executed that Flame Imp because 4 damage when you're at 14 health feels terrible. And then the Doomguard would be insanely effective. But now the Doomguard would just get wrecked, so... That was a pretty huge difference.
I would have to say that, yeah, if he plays the Doomguard, like you said, he would get wrecked. And Knife Juggler plus the egg is a much more stable play. Whereas Irony, he doesn't seem to have like that great answers against this.
Missed the juggle, really unfortunate. I think you might even push face damage anyways, just because the warrior's so low. Every little bit of damage is huge here.
Yeah, not only that, but you also have the Doomguard in hand. So anytime you draw a Power Overwhelming in the next 2 or 3 turns, then you probably will have lethal. Warrior, they actually can't gain that much armor in this situation since there's not too many minions on your side of the board and the warrior side of the board, so they can't get a huge armor smith turn. And also they don't typically play too many shield blocks. 1 to 2 is like more standard now. But even if they play those shield blocks, that means they're not using their mana to clear the board. Like if he just plays a shield block here, he only has 2 mana left to deal with this like pretty intimidating board.
He can clear the whole board here. He actually didn't even need to sacrifice the Acolyte. He could have played Warsong Commander plus Taskmaster and run the Taskmaster into the Knife Juggler. This would make the Warsong Commander really vulnerable to a Power Overwhelming on the egg, which I think is a huge concern at that point. But if the Warsong Commander was like unchecked, then you would just win the game. So it's going to take a long time. Otherwise, you have to survive until about turn 8, and then your patron combo is normally really effective, just as like a base move. All right. This play, he gets to squeeze in armor.
So I think you can go for it here.
Yeah.
You're putting your opponent down to 4 HP. And and that's pretty good. But the only issue here is even at 4 HP, it's like the point where warriors tend to stabilize, and we can see he can stabilize with that execute.
I think having like just seen the execute, you might think he has a second, but that might have been his only good play to clear the juggler without taking face damage. So that's it's got to be so tempting knowing that if the Doomguard sticks, there's no way you lose.
There's also a possibility that you trade your egg into the 2/2. So he basically needs an execute procer and the execute. And from what we can see, that's actually the correct move.
Yeah, yeah, that would pretty much win the game. Armoring up would give him 1 health above lethal from the Warlock still if he traded, but... Ooh, and he makes the call. Really good play by Suki.
Oh, slam. He needed that exact card. I think he could have gotten like an Inner Rage there, but it's less likely to get an Activator since you already used your Taskmaster, and typically these kind of decks only play 1 Taskmaster.
Well, there's no way he can kill the Nerubian, so there's still plenty of potential for the Zoo. Classic Zoo Warlock battle, no cards in hand on turn 6, and we'll see if he top decks some lethal damage.
Nope.
Oh, so close.
There's actually like, yeah, I was gonna say there's some merit to implosioning your own minion. But
Suki very animated today.
Here's the funny thing: if you implosion your own minion, what do you hope for? A 2, a 3, or a 4?
Definitely not a 4. I think you'd hope for a 2, personally.
Yeah, you want to get it out of whirlwind range, so he basically needs something plus a whirlwind effect to get rid of this. But like, oh man.
I mean, I think that's fine. On the future turns, he can't really ever play Implosion, though, just because of the Patron combo. So the Nubian will get cleared here, and that could almost be the end of it. There's only 1 Doomguard left to immediately add to the board, and there is a Patron combo in hand for any smaller creature. Maybe Dr. Boom would be quite a good top deck.
From Irony's perspective, though, he's still very worried. If he just death bites this creature, he's going to be at max 4 HP. Yeah. And you're in your mind, you always think that he definitely has Doomguard, but as we can, like, he knows that Sukipan basically floated 4 mana or 5 mana last turn, so I guess he has to top deck it.
Yeah, I really like thinking about what he must have in his hand to float that mana, because no, it can't be Doomguard, right? If he had Doomguard, he would have played it. So
definitely. And also, I think Irony actually knows that Implosion is one of the cards, since Sukipan hovered over with the Implosion on his creature.
Yeah. All right. Can he pick up the Doomguard? No, it's not a Doomguard.
One more chance.
No.
Void Terror. That's actually pretty good.
But this Patron combo is going to shut everything down. The only thing is Irony cannot play Armor if he was to use the Patrons here. So he would run the risk of another top deck Doomguard still ending. Is there any play to clear without? Could use the Frothing with charge, it looks like.
Yeah. What else is interesting is that if Sukipan had actually implosioned his own creature on that last turn, he would have won the game.
Yeah. Yeah, he would have.
Like, there was no whirlwind effects, especially if he hit either a 2 or a 3. If he hit a 4, then he would have those 4 implosion minions, and Irony would have gone for a different play, perhaps using his Battle Rage in order to draw into a whirlwind effect.
Alright, so here we go. The Patrons hit the board. It's definitely not lethal, but he can clear everything. It will come down to just a Doomguard, I think, is the only way. Unless Suki put in some other shenanigan charge creature.
Sukipan praying right now.
Oh! Oh, and he gets...
That's pretty lucky, I have to say.
Oh man.
It's a little unfortunate that we can't see Irony's camera here, but this is Hearthstone, and Sukipan is able to take this entire series with a 4-1 score.
Really well played. I mean, like, really, really well played. He did a great job in those games. And he moves on to the finals now, guaranteeing himself $750 more prize money, giving him 1,500 total, at least.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
1,500 prize money. And Irony, he's not going to leave home empty-handed, of course. He's going to get all those valuable GEICO points and $750 prize money of his own. So
Yeah.
pretty nice. Not only that, but he gets some exposure in the Western scene, and he puts himself on the map as a Hearthstone player who has competed in such a featured tournament, right?
Yeah, that was a really good series. I mean, I love those best of seven series, and that was the games were like each one of those games were pretty spectacular. I think the first game I still want to go back and review that the Patron Warrior Math against the Warlock, but other than that, it looked like just absolutely solid from the players. Great decision making. So
Yeah. Do you have any final comments on the this entire match before we move on to our next match?
not sure. I mean, I guess I just want to see more from Suki in the finals. That was pretty good series, but I think it spoke for itself on that final game there with the top deck Doomguard. There was some RNG all around with the high main steal in the Hunter game versus Druid. That was pretty clutch, where he could have stole a Mad Scientist.
Yeah. So I'm definitely really excited to see the next match, of course, which will be Firebat versus Trump. Probably the feature match of this of today. Two really big names. Both of these players doing really well over the not only the past year, but also just like in their lifetimes, in their Hearthstone careers. Before we move on, though, we have to give a slight plug to our sponsors who really support our tournament, GEICO. And you can get a free GEICO quote from going to geico.onog.gg. You can save 15% or more on your car insurance, and it'll only take 15 minutes. Of course, you can also enter for a chance to win an official TSM PC at that same website. So it's pretty good. And not only that, you can go to liquidhearth.com to sign up for our open tournaments, which will be held tomorrow on Monday and on Wednesday as well. We're going to hold 4 open tournaments in total for your chance to compete in the same spot as Sukipan and Irony in our feature tournament next week. So definitely something to check out there as well. We're going to take a pretty short break, and when we get back, we're going to have our feature match of the third feature tournament, Trump versus Firebat.